The core objective of EUniversal, an energy project funded by the European Union, is to develop a universal approach on the use of flexibility by DSOs and their interaction with new markets. Last year, together with the project's representative, we demystified the project's focus and action points. This time, as the project enters its final stage, and together with Carlos Damas Silva, coordinator of EUniversal, and my guest for this episode, we are going to discuss the outcomes and next steps. Carlos, thank you very much for being here with me. Would you please describe in a few words the EUniversal project, just to remind to our audience?
Okay, thank you very much for your invitation, and also I'm happy to be here. The EUniversal project has a very simple objective, a core objective, which is to provide the tools for system operators, market platforms, and also flexibility providers to interact between themselves in order to come up with new services for the management of the grid. In this case, we are working mostly with the distribution grid, but it can also be used for other players, such as these market platforms. And within this context, we are developing the UMEI, which is a very simple list or set of common APIs that may be integrated by each one of those parties or even adapted in order to allow for this data exchange to take place. So we are not developing a single platform that will concentrate data. We are just providing the bridges between the entities so that the data can freely flow. And within that context, we are developing this UMI together with some tools that can support the enablement of flexibility service for grid management, which in turn will make the grid more efficient, more reliable, and also can be used for other purposes, such as an alternative to investment on the distribution grids themselves, and also for operational purposes, and help the distribution companies and also the consumers go forward with the digitalization and also the transformation of the electricity system.
Okay, so building on what you just said, on your description of the project, which specific, let's say, point of the EU energy grid is the project covering, and how?
Well, it's not just one specific point. So as we aim for decarbonization of the society overall, we are seeing an increasing electrification of the system, also the introduction of distributed generations, new loads such as electric vehicles, heat pumps that are of course more efficient, but they demand a lot from the existing infrastructure. So the purpose of flexibility is to not build an oversized infrastructure that has to exist to overcome these limitations, but to work with the existing infrastructure, optimize it as much as possible, and be able to integrate this kind of resources in the network more easily. We can think technically, of course, on the distribution side on congestion management of the medium voltage and low voltage lines that are the voltage levels that we are mostly working within EUniversal demonstrations. But also we can think on voltage issues that arise a lot with the introduction of distributed generation, especially also on low voltage. So the EUniversal will provide the means for this flexibility to appear and to optimize the network together with the tools that we already dispose in terms of smart grid management.
Okay, so it is sort of a holistic view, and a few ways that it can actually assist in the energy transition. And being such, I would assume that it has some partners and a very specific target audience, right?
It has indeed some core partners of the project. So the project has around 19 partners from 8 different European countries. And but more important than the number of partners is the type of partners that the project has. So currently we have 3 DSOs working from Portugal, from Germany and from Poland. So Areti is the coordinator of the project, but we are also working with E.ON, Mitnet, and also Energa operator from Poland. But also we tried to, and we were able to bring in some market operators, so companies that have real experience in managing energy markets and flexibility markets, and working with them to come up with this EUniversal. That's why the name of the project exists. So it's an EUniversal approach to the process, to enable the flexibility process. Then we have, of course, some research institutions. We have Vito, we have Inestec, we have Veric. I'm not going to pronounce them all, and some associations of the sector, some technology providers. So it has all a very diverse set of partners, but that's the appropriate amount, and they have the capabilities to deliver these holistic solutions or set of solutions that the project is about. Because the UMEI, of course, is the core concept, but just with the UMEI, also it's very difficult to achieve what we are trying to. So we also develop a set of complementary tools and tools for the management of the grids, but also tools, regulatory tools that may assist us in performing the work to complete the work as better as possible.
So as the project enters its final stage, could you elaborate on the major issues that your team faced?
Yeah, we faced, in fact, some issues. Some of them are technical, of course. Others are more operational. And probably I will start with those because we are testing the developed concepts, also the UMEI, in 3 different places across Europe. So we are setting up a demonstration in Portugal, another one in Germany, and another one in Poland. And for these demonstrations to happen, and especially because we are targeting mostly the medium, but overall the low voltage networks, which are something unexplored in terms of active interaction of the consumers with the grid. We had some difficulties and are having, of course, in engaging consumers to take an active role on this kind of projects. This is very difficult, namely because of European laws that prevent us from freely using the data from the consumers, which is natural because that's their personal data. But this obliges us to a new set of work procedures to be in place so that we can count on these consumers to be on board for the projects, and they are essential. This is one part of the issues that we faced, of course, but we are trying to surpass them, and I believe we will successfully. The other one has to do more with the UMEI itself, so the set of messages and set of interactions that we are proposing. That's really, we felt that the background material to develop that, to identify what are the key parts that have to be covered by such an interface, were still not explored to the appropriate level. So that we had to do some work as basis for its development. But after all, that's why we are developing also the project. So we had this chance to define the flexibility services for each one of the services, which are the procedures that need to take place, and to propose the technical interface so that the DSOs can communicate with the market operators, the flexibility providers can also communicate with the market operators, and also that the DSO can communicate with the aggregators for this purpose of flexibility provisioning. So we are trying to create here a mesh network between all the stakeholders.
So you would say that you learned from these issues, right?
Of course, yeah.
And what are the lessons that you learned?
We have many lessons learned. Also, again, in the technical side, we have a much clearer view on what can we take out from flexibility that we had not a few years ago. We identified what are the grid needs in terms of planning of the grids, in terms of expansion, in terms of operation, and each one of these phases or these activities from the system operators can leverage on the usage of flexibility. If well structured and well thought and well planned, we can target operations, give them tools to work with flexibility and to run a more cost-efficient networks. But also for the planning, for the expansion, this is also true. But there are, of course, more benefits. If you think in terms of research institutions, typically these institutions have a lot of tools that they develop. And in projects like this, they have the chance to test these solutions in a real life scenario. Also, the system operators can learn from those innovative approaches and perhaps apply some of these procedures to the operation. Of course, this creates a much more comprehensive view on what we are dealing with. On the market side, we can also see that we also learned a lot how can the flexibility from the users be aggregated to provide services to the grid. This is still an open question that we are trying to answer across the demonstrations as they progress, but there is this degree and this question which asks how far can a low voltage customer, a single customer, provide this benefit to the grid, and what he is going to want for it. We are also trying to answer this question with the demonstrations in the project, but of course we are also developing these innovative ways of aggregating resources, of working with domestic appliances, for example, or solar panels to provide these services in innovative approaches, other than just relying on big consumers or big producers to deviate their load curve.
So all these lessons learned, all this knowledge gathered, and then the project ends. What are the next steps?
Well, in there we have a very well-structured plan, because the EUMEI as it stands is open source. So we set this very clear from the beginning, that we wanted to develop an open source interface for any stakeholder of the industry. It is right now published on the EUniversal website and also on GitHub. So if you are, for example, a system operator or a market operator, you can just go there, download the EUMEI, see if it covers any of your needs, because it has also a modular approach. You don't have to implement it all. You just need to rely on some core functionalities or core messages that you are lacking and need to exchange with other partners. You can slightly adapt it to your current situation, and hence evolving it. So we are giving back to the community also what in this case the European Commission invested in the project, so that others can adopt. And our overall objective is to turn the EUMEI not into a standard as we are used to, but a de facto standard. So meaning that we are trying to make the EUMEI as much as simple for others to use, so that everyone wants to adopt it. That's the main objective.
You mentioned the European Commission, and that's a very nice assist for my final question to you. I would like to ask you if the rules and regulations that we currently have from the European Commission, but also from local authorities, because Europe is, let's say, a collection of countries, right? It's not only the European Commission. Are they helping in the topic of interoperability? Because I know that this project has interoperability is one of the main focus points of this project. So my question to you is, first, is it achievable in a pan-European level? And second, do we have the rules and regulations needed to achieve it?
Yeah, I would say that in a general term, the interoperability is achievable. But it's not like a prescribed way of exchanging data. So I think it is achievable to a certain extent, and not fully interoperable in the sense that everyone will talk the same standard between themselves. this is more or less what we are also trying to provide with UMEI. So trying to come up with common ways for people to communicate, however, also allowing for slight modifications to happen here and there, because we are talking with a universe of, I don't know, a couple of hundreds of entities that will need to communicate to provide these services to the grid. Also, the relationship between the flexibility service provider and the consumer, and enforcing one standard would be really challenging. If you try to make 30 companies talk the same language, that's already a challenge, but that's possible. If you try to get a bit deeper into the situation and assess the low voltage networks and the medium voltage and the consumers, that's really, in my perspective, impossible to prescribe a standard for everyone to talk. So I think the solutions that must be in place should follow the trends also from other industries. The IT industry, of course, and the banking industry is a good example, and rely on these APIs that of course are interoperable and easy to implement. So I think easiness is the key word here, to allow and to provide easy tools so that companies can speak to each other. On the regulatory part, the project has also developed some insights in that regard, mainly on regulatory sandboxes. So there's of course cons and pros about this kind of regulatory incentives or setups that could leverage with which flexibility could leverage. So if more projects and easiness of setup of this kind of projects can be tested, that's also a way to achieve more interoperability, because we have the possibility to test different scenarios with different solutions, and I think we just can aim for full interoperability if we extensively test things and we adapt fast to the current changes in the sector.
So what I keep is that it is possible, interoperability is possible, as long as we go with simplicity, communication, and collaboration as much as possible, right?
Yes, that's what we are trying to achieve.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you, Areti. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us.